It started with a car crash. I was in the passenger seat. We were on our way home from school. My brother Liam was driving and I was next to him with headphones on, sort of listening to him talk about a job mom was pushing him to apply for. Then I heard the scream of tires. The wheel jerked suddenly and there was a sound of metal ripping apart. I remember blood, my own, a lot of pain and glass. Then everything went black. When I woke up, my parents weren't there crying or holding my hand. I was in a room with bright lights and the smell of cleaning supplies. My arms were hooked up to IVs and my body ached like it had been cut open and sewn back together. I blinked slowly, trying to figure out where I was. My mouth was dry. I tried to talk, but no words came out, just a small groan. The nurse saw I was awake and called for someone. A few moments later, my mom and dad walked in, but they didn't look panicked or relieved like parents who almost lost their daughter. They looked tired, not from worry, but like I was a bother. "She's awake," my mom said to the doctor in a cold voice. Not to me. She didn't hold my hand. My dad wouldn't look at me. The doctor smiled at me, looking relieved. "You've been through a big operation. You lost a kidney in the accident, but you're stable now. We saved you." I tried to ask about Liam, but my throat hurt. The nurse gave me ice chips. When I finally could talk, my mother answered like she was bored. "He's fine. He just has some scratches. You, on the other hand, will have to stay here for a while." She didn't seem upset, just annoyed. The days all blurred together. I was stuck in that hospital bed trying to heal my body and my mind. Liam never visited, not once. My parents only came when they had to. I thought maybe it was the shock, maybe the guilt, or maybe they just didn't know how to handle what happened until the night I woke up and everything changed. It was late. I was having trouble sleeping because the pain was too sharp and the room was too cold. I was almost asleep when I heard voices outside my door. I was hooked up to fluids, weak, but awake enough to listen. It was my mom and dad talking to the doctor, whispering. "So, you're saying if we take her other kidney?" my mother's voice said. "She wouldn't survive that," the doctor replied firmly. "She's already lost one. Taking the second one would mean..." "But Liam needs it," my dad cut in. "He's the one with a future. She's just a girl. She doesn't even know what she wants in life. She'll never be able to carry much or run. She's already limited," my mother added in a flat voice. "This would be a sacrifice that means something." The doctor was shocked. "You're talking about killing your daughter? She'd be doing something good for once," my mom snapped. I couldn't breathe. My own parents were trying to offer me up as a donor to save Liam. They hadn't asked me, they hadn't told me. They were planning it in secret. My stomach felt sick. I pulled the sheets over my face and tried to be still. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pull the IVs out and run, but I couldn't even lift my arm. Tears soaked my pillow. I had always known they loved Liam more. He was the golden boy, the one they were proud of. I was always second best, but I never thought they'd be willing to end my life just to keep his perfect little future going. They left. I waited until morning to say anything, and I decided right then that I would get out. I would live, but not just get by. I would make sure they never forgot what they tried to do to me. Not ever. The next morning, I quietly asked the nurse if I could talk to the hospital social worker. I didn't say why. I just told her I felt unsafe. The nurse nodded. With a little bit of worry in her eyes, something in my voice must have told her this wasn't about pain or getting better. This was about survival. By that afternoon, I was sitting up a little in bed, while a kind-faced woman named Judith sat across from me with a notepad, and the softest voice I had ever heard. I told her everything. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too numb. I just spoke. In a low voice, being careful with my words, my parents asked a doctor to take my remaining kidney for my brother. They said I wasn't worth as much. Judith blinked once, then closed her notepad. That was all I needed to say. That day changed everything. I didn't see my parents again for a week. Judith and the hospital filed a complaint. A protective order was put on my room. My medical choices could no longer be seen or changed by my family. I had never felt so scared, yet so free. Judith helped me make plans. I wasn't 18 yet, just a few months away, but with a judge's permission and the recordings from the hospital's sound system, which had caught parts of that conversation outside my door, I was given a temporary legal separation from my parents. They couldn't touch me, not by law, not in person. When my parents found out, they were furious. They stormed into the hospital waiting room and tried to demand to see me. Security led them out. I watched from my window as my mother pointed her finger at the nurse's desk, screaming, "She's brainwashing our daughter. That girl belongs to us." I didn't belong to them anymore, not after what they said. Not after what they planned. The news spread quietly among the staff. The kidney girl, they called me. A few nurses cried when they heard. One doctor came in and put a hand on mine and said, You deserve to live on your own terms. After 3 weeks, I was sent to a foster care home. It wasn't fancy. The apartment was small. The mattress was thin, but it was safe. Safe was everything. I finished high school online while I was recovering. I worked nights at a bookstore and saved every penny. I said no to college help, even when social services offered it. I didn't want anything that came with strings attached. I wanted full control of my life. I eventually changed my last name. I took my great-grandmother's maiden name, Olin, a name that had no link to those people who called themselves my family. Years went by quietly, but I never forgot what they tried to do. Not when I got my first job at a healthcare company. Not when I moved up in the company in 3 years to become the head of operations. Not when by 24 I became part owner of the company I helped build. And definitely not when a familiar name showed up in a search for job candidates for our newest open position. Liam, my brother. I stared at his resume like it was a ghost. He had no idea I was still alive or doing well. He thought I had disappeared into some system, that I had faded away with no voice. Maybe he even believed I had died. That mom and dad got what they wanted, but I hadn't died. I had just been quietly building the future they never believed I could have, and now I was going to be the one in control of his fate. I invited him for an in-person interview. He accepted. He didn't recognize my name on the invitation. Of course not. And he certainly didn't expect to walk into the executive meeting room and find me sitting at the head of the table looking straight into his eyes. His mouth dropped. "You," he stammered. "You're alive," I smiled. "Alive, healthy, and no longer yours to keep quiet." Liam didn't know where to look. His eyes darted. From the marble floor to the gold-edged glass wall behind me, to the framed awards I had earned, but they always came back to my face. My calm look. My strength. The strength they never believed I could have. You're the coup," he said again, his voice cracking. I leaned forward, my fingers linked. "Yes, of the company you're begging? To join the one you sent a resume to without doing any research?" He tried to smile. "Look, I was just looking for opportunities." "You didn't know I'd survive," I asked, "or that I'd become more than a donor in a hospital bed?" Liam opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no words. "I read your resume," I went on, tapping it with one finger. "Your grades are average. Your experience is not much, but the feeling that you deserve everything, that's fully there." He swallowed hard. "Listen, I didn't know what mom and dad said. I wasn't part of. They came to the hospital and told a doctor to take my organ without asking me," I said, my voice rising now. "They said, 'She's not as important as Liam.'" I heard them. I was awake. "Do you know what that does to someone at 17? He looked down. "Tell me, Liam, how does it feel to interview for a job owned by the girl you thought would disappear? Who you thought you could just throw away?" "Please," he whispered. "I need this job. Things haven't been easy." I stood up slowly and walked to the window. The city sparkled below us. My voice was cold. "You can tell mom and dad I heard every word, and that now I'm in a position they'll never reach." Then I turned to face him. "As for this job," a pause. "I created a policy here. One that protects people who've been betrayed by their families, who are treated like nothing. So, no, Liam, you don't get to wear a suit and walk into this company and act like nothing happened." His face turned red. "You're ruining my life." I tilted my head. "Oh, you mean like you all tried to ruin mine by stealing my body? My freedom? My future?" He glared. "You always played the victim." I leaned in just enough so he could hear. Every word. "No, Liam, I was the victim. Now I'm the ending." He stormed out. I stood there for a moment after he left, quiet and peaceful, and then I called HR. "Blacklist the name permanently and send a notice to our partner companies. They won't be hiring him either." That night I went home to a simple apartment that looked out over the lake. I didn't need a mansion. I had something more valuable: peace. I sat on the balcony and read the email from the hospital. They were starting a campaign to protect minors from parents making unethical choices about organ donation. They were naming it after me. The Claire Protection Protocol. Claire, my new name, my real name. Not the one my parents gave me, but the one I chose when I set myself free. A week later, a letter came in the mail. It had no return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from my parents. Inside was a desperate plea. They were having serious money trouble. My brother couldn't find work. They were losing their house. They asked if I would help as a daughter. I wrote back, "I was your daughter when I was unconscious in a hospital bed. You chose your son. So now, live with that choice." I never heard from them again. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in the hospital when I was half awake, with tubes in my arm, and heard my own mother ask a doctor, "Can we take her organ for our son?" and I smile because they thought that was the end of my story. They had no idea it was only the beginning.